Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the wonderful youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. The wonderful young man. What's going on down in Florida today?
Today, Florida is actually quite sunny. And yesterday, I was talking to, I think, my mom on the phone, talking about how ridiculous thunderstorms have been the last few days. But today is nice, and today is my lone day off from the stock job. So I've got my little Big Ten writing to do at Land of 10 tonight. But other than that, I've been free all day. So it's been a chill day. Been nice. Now I get to talk sports with you, and gonna be talking a little college basketball, and that'll be more uplifting. But then we'll talk about something that's not as uplifting. Definitely a tragic story in and of itself, but we'll obviously dive into it with the Penn State thing. But starting off with college basketball, that'll be more uplifting. So things are good in general.
Well, that's good. I'm glad things are good. But like you said, we're gonna take I'll call it a horrific story and just kind of talk about it. I mean, it's something, Kevin, that I don't want people to be naive about what happened. I mean, this is horrific with somebody losing their life. But what happened there? You and I both know. We both went to the same school, UW-Whitewater, great school. We both loved our time there. We both indulged in some extracurricular activities, such as the one that happened at the frat house. It's part of college life, and people are naive if they think that it doesn't happen on every campus across the country, and even more naive if you think you can stop it. I don't think you can stop it, Kevin. I mean, we were both in college, different eras, different times. I'm a bit older than you are, but I would guarantee outside of academics, outside of, I know you worked for the Royal Purple, the paper, so you did that. I had athletics myself, but outside of those things in our free time, I would imagine what you did a few years back and what I did a long time ago, pretty much the same. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have 100% agree with that. Whether it was 100 years ago, which you're not that old, or,
No, not quite that old yet.
No, okay, not yet. Or 20, 30 years, or for me, I graduated 3 years ago. I graduated 3 years ago. So, yeah, like you just said, to keep it short for right now, is there's no stopping partying from going on. There's no stopping a little extra drinking going on. It's just a matter of the old saying of kids being kids, and some kids, to me, are mature, and some kids at 18, 19 years old are not mature. And not to say, I'll keep it there for now.
Yeah, and like I was going to say, we're definitely going to get into that. Let's start off with something good, exciting, though. I mean, it's not even the 2017-18 academic year yet, Kevin. Students have not even reported to college yet, but Vegas has decided to put their odds out for NCAA basketball next year. The odds are out, and I'm going to turn it back over to you because Big Ten basketball, I know we're excited for football, but I know we're going to be even more excited about basketball because I like what's in this conference this year with the teams, with the players. But Vegas has already dropped some lines for the 2018 NCAA champion, haven't they?
They have. And there are, I guess, future odds for like NFL and college basketball, and the NBA has even come out and said that the Warriors are huge favorites for next year's title, and I'm sure it'll be that way for the next couple years after that, to be honest. But so college basketball, I guess future title odds have been out. They updated them. I don't know when originally they came out for next season and winning the title, but I guess for
they probably came out the day after the championship game, Kevin.
Probably.
I mean, that's just the way that Vegas works. So,
yeah.
And then they update them, and then they update them, and then they update them. And I'm not a betting guy, so I don't know how that works. If you put like $20 down, if it's 20-1, and what if it changes to 12-1? Do you still get the 20-1 odds, or you get the 12-1 odds? I don't know. Maybe if there's somebody that bets a lot, find us on Twitter, TroyRobert967 @KidCunny. Let us know, and I'm totally serious, Kevin. I don't know. If I drop $100 bill down today on 20-1 odds for something, but 6 months from now the odds go to 12-1, what odds do I get? I'm not sure. Do you know?
I'm 99% sure you get those original odds that would be, I guess, quote unquote, on your ticket. Because, like, we'll see every Super Bowl, if not necessarily Super Bowl, but say NBA Finals or World Series, and a team who's supposed to be 500 and they randomly, like every NFL season, for example, there's always a team that finishes on the bottom of a division one year, and then the next year they win the division and go to the playoffs. That happens like literally every NFL season, just about. And so to take that team before the season and say, hey, just for an example, the Miami Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl this year. If you take those odds now and say the Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl, it's probably something like 50-1. It could be worse than that. It could be like 100-1. But they have a decent quarterback. They're a 500 type team. So if you take them now at 50-1, as opposed to them making the postseason, and then at that point there's, you got 12 teams left. They won the division. Say they get a bye, they only have to win, 2-3 games to win the Super Bowl. Then the odds are down to like 20-1, as opposed to 50 or 80-1 like they are now before the season even starts. But so you always see like someone betting a huge amount on the Dolphins winning the Super Bowl, and then it's like, oh my God, they're a game away from this guy winning, $100,000 after putting down $1,000 on it or something. So I'm 99% sure you get the odds that are on your ticket of when you place that bet. That's my understanding. That's my guess of it anyway. For this show and this topic, we're talking about college basketball odds for next season. And Michigan State, like Troy said, the newly released odds. I'm sure there were odds before this, but Vegas Insider is just one of the few legitimate Vegas sports books out there, and they released their newest odds and had Michigan State at 6-1 favorites to win the title. And the next best favorite was North Carolina at 7-1, Duke 7-1, Arizona after that at 8-1, Kentucky 8-1, Kansas 12-1. But so Michigan State, on top of every other team next year, at least for right now, as we're recording this, July 11th, Michigan State is the odds-on favorite to win the national title. And it's obviously not, like they're this prohibitive favorite. And so I know, Troy, you're going to get into what the heck are we doing here, making, lines and bets for what's going to happen in next April, literally, not even March, but once the title game goes down in college basketball this upcoming season, it's going to be April. It's going to be like April 5th. And so to put a bet on Michigan State right now, to put a bet on any team is crazy. Vegas is kind of saying, hey, Michigan State's up there, North Carolina's up there, Duke, Arizona, Kentucky. All these teams are kind of close. There's no, we think Michigan State's obviously the best team. It's a 1-1 odd. You get your money back. You're still, if you're putting $100 on Michigan State to win the title now, you're getting $600 back. So it's not a terrible bet, but obviously Michigan State is lumped in with the vast majority of other top-end teams. So I guess your quick thoughts, Troy, or
Why would you bet now?
Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Why are you betting now? I could see, and I'll put this, I'm not a betting guy, and I guess I could come up with a couple extra bucks if I wanted to be. So let's say, for example, there was a team that we knew had some good recruits, maybe some one-and-done guys, and maybe a little bit of a sleeper, and they're sitting in that maybe 20-25-1 odds now, but we know they're going to be a pretty good team. If there was something like that where there might have been, they rarely make mistakes, but let's say they would have thrown, I don't even know a team. I can't think of a team, but let's just say the odds were 25-1. And we think, hey, they got a good shot to make the tournament and make the Final Four and all the kind of different bets that they have, then maybe I would take those higher odds. Because like you said, I don't know. If I'm going to keep that same odds all the way to the end, great. Then maybe I would do something like that. But 6-1, who cares? They haven't even went to school yet. These kids are still out gallivanting around. What did you call it the other day? Trotting around on the show?
Yeah, I say trotting once every so often.
You were trotting around. These kids are still trotting around in the summer. They could get hurt on their moped. They could get hurt on their scooter. Who knows? I don't know. It's preseason polls, Vegas odds 6 months, 8 months before the thing is going to happen. To me, ridiculous. I know we talk about it and all these things, but where they have it, I guess I'll turn it over from this point of it. Not necessarily the odds, but to have Michigan State as one of the, teams that could win the national title, I'm all there. They're going to have a good club. They're going to have a very good club, so it's not ludicrous to think that they're going to be one of those teams there. However, they haven't practiced yet. No kids have reported to school yet. Knock on wood, every school is going to have their signed recruits show up, but you don't know what will happen. You also don't know what's going to happen when they get into school. Could there be off the court issues? Could there be academic issues in semester one? You got to remember, basketball's in the second semester, Kevin. There could be team academic rules that are broken and things of that nature. So for teams to get a value placed on them right now, an odd placed on them, I kind of think it's silly. But if you want to talk about what teams next year are going to look good, we can look on paper. I'm okay with that. It's just all of these preseason polls and so on and so forth. They don't do anything for me. And I don't even get really worked up about it. It's just like, why? Why are you doing this? But when you look at the Big Ten, Kevin, I mentioned it before, I'm excited for Big Ten sports in 2017-18. Football, you think you're hands down best conference in America. I'm close. They've got a lot of great teams there this year. Then you look at basketball, a young team that did some good stuff at the end of the season to get some teams into the NCAA tournament. Yeah, some young guys went pro, and we discussed that on an earlier show. If you want to go back, look in the archives. Kevin got me all worked up on that one show about that, these young guys going to the pros before their time. But, Kevin, good recruiting, good coaches, good teams in the Big Ten. I'm excited for Big Ten basketball also. So this year in Big Ten sports, I think the show is going to be great because we're going to get excited every week talking about football and basketball. But when you look at this, Kevin, there's no doubt in my mind that you have to put Michigan State as the clear-cut favorite out of the Big Ten to do some damage in the NCAA tournament before, hypothetically, anything starts.
Yeah, I'll start with this, I guess, that Michigan State's first right now, I guess, with their 6-1 odds. They're the favorite. Michigan's 14th, Purdue's 15th. Michigan is 28-1, Purdue's 33-1. Indiana is 19th overall in the country at 40-1, and Minnesota's 66-1. They're 25th in the country. What I'm reading is just the top 25 best odds. So I think Minnesota is bringing back a lot of their core. I think they're bringing back, I want to say 4 out of 5 of their starters. Don't quote me on that. But so 66-1 odds for Minnesota, especially in a year like this, where as you're seeing just right now, there is no anticipated potential 40-0 Kentucky team that has beyond obvious favorites to get to a Final Four or something. There are obviously a few really good teams like Michigan State and North Carolina again, and Duke and Arizona and Kentucky, although North Carolina lost a few guys.
Did I lose you, Kevin?
No, you're good. I guess I forget. Unfortunately, I forgot exactly where I left off. But I think what I was getting to was there is no supposed obvious Kentucky has a potential to go 40-0. There's North Carolina's second best odds at 7-1, and I think they lost a couple nice pieces. And they're the second best team, quote unquote, according to Vegas. And Duke, I don't think will be as good as they were a year ago. They're tied with North Carolina for the second best odds. So if there is a year to take a team like, hey, Minnesota's returning the bulk of their roster, I like what they had a year ago, personally. And so 66-1 odds, to throw down $20 and to win just 60 times that would be over $1,200. It would be over $1,300 So that's not a absolutely atrocious bet in a year like this, is I guess the point I was getting to. For Michigan State being the odds-on favorite, I would probably agree with that. I just looking at these top teams right now, like Kansas and Kentucky and Arizona and Duke even, all these teams lost a decent amount of their guys. It's not like Arizona's returning the bulk of their guys. I know of at least two that were really good a year ago that left. Duke had the same thing. North Carolina the same thing. Kentucky has always got a new class. Kansas lost a couple really good players, a couple senior guards, plus that freshman wing, Josh Jackson, who went number 4 overall. Villanova's up there. They should be. Missouri is actually in the top 10 because they got the number 1 recruit in the country. But it's interesting to see a team like Missouri in the top 10 just because you get the number 1 overall recruit. Then you got Florida, Gonzaga, Wichita State, West Virginia, UCLA, and then finally Michigan and Purdue. But so I just think it's a wide-open year, and I think Michigan State's obviously got a lot of good players back. Obviously Bridges coming back was huge, but Nick Ward was a freshman a year ago. He's back inside. Josh Langford as a 2-guard is back. He was a freshman a year ago. Cassius Winston, the point guard, also back. He was a freshman. So we talked on the show just when Troy and I were starting this Go Big or Go Home show that Michigan State, Tom Izzo probably had his best recruiting class a year ago with these 4 freshmen. Then you had a couple front court injuries. Eventually, Eron Harris was lost for the season as a wing transfer from West Virginia. He was a senior. So Eron Harris is probably the big loss from a year ago. But like Tum Tumner Jr. as a backup point guard, he's going to be a senior now behind Cassius Winston. So Michigan State has depth on the interior. They've got a couple. I know they had a transfer coming in a year ago. He was out since the beginning of the season. I know Gavin Schilling is going to be a 5th-year senior as a big. He's going to be coming off the bench. He's going to be nice behind Nick Ward. So Michigan State's got depth. They've got stars like Miles Bridges. I think Cassius Winston takes a huge step forward as the team's leader at point guard, who's an unbelievable passer. I think Josh Langford, who did fine things but never really broke out, is going to break out as a sophomore. I know that Nick Ward's going to be good. He averaged like 14 and 6 as a freshman. So all these guys are coming back, and you have a star in Bridges, a top 5 prospect to take you to that next level. I don't disagree with Michigan State being the top team, and in general, I think taking a team like Minnesota and their 66-1 odds really isn't that crazy in a year that's going to kind of be up for grabs like it was this past year in college basketball.
If you really want to go on a sleeper, find Wisconsin. That would be a crazy sleeper pick, Kevin, because they're not going to be very good this year. And I don't want to say they're not going to be very good. I mean, they got a good core. They've got some young guys, but they've lost the so-called, and I'm air quoting, the leaders. But we saw what happened last year. I know they made a little noise in the NCAA tournament, but they were a team, when I looked at it, Kevin, that I said it a number of times on the show, just didn't have it. They didn't have that team mentality in my books, but Wisconsin's going to be down. And I'm going to be a realistic Wisconsin fan next year when I'm watching them play. You know, can Guard get the most out of what he's got? I know he's taken over a good program that has a good foundation. They go out, they do recruiting, they recruit. They go find good guys that are going to fit in the system. Will the system warrant that, though, next year? I'm not holding my hopes out, Kevin. I'm just not. They could be a solid club, but I don't think, this is going to be a team that scares people next year. And hopefully they prove me wrong. But if you really want to go put $20 on a team, do it on Wisconsin, because their odds got to be around, I would say, 70 to 80 to 1. Does that list go down beyond the 25? Can you find it?
Not in front of me. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, like South Carolina is the last team on this list, 25th. Oklahoma is also 25th. SMU, Florida State all share the same odds. They're 80 to 1, and they're at the bottom of this list. So Wisconsin is beyond 80 to 1 odds. Put $10 on Wisconsin, you're getting at least $800 next year if they win the title. That's not atrocious, and it's going to be more than that. So it's Wisconsin, and they're going to have their system.
Folks. Don't do it, because they're not going to win the title. Do not take Troy's betting tips. Wisconsin is not winning the national title in basketball. Doesn't mean I'm not going to cheer for them to win the national title, but they're not going to win the national title, nor would I pick them in the NCAA pool, Kevin. Even if they went through the regular season undefeated, there's just too many question marks. I mean, again, we're talking about, not watching them play a game. But I'll tell you what, it's exciting to talk about things like this. But Michigan State, yeah, they've got a very good, talented roster. Like you said, Bridges back. How can you bet against them in the Big Ten? You can't. There's going to be solid teams. Like I said, Wisconsin will most likely be a solid team. They're not going to be at the bottom of the conference, but, middle of the pack, and if they play above their expectations, maybe in that upper third or fourth that we talk about. But anything else to add in the basketball world, Kevin? Then we're going to move on to our topic that is probably going to make some headlines here in the next, it is making headlines today, but we're going to talk about how it relates to athletics in college.
Yeah, my final word, when we first started this podcast, we were all basketball because football had literally just ended. And so we talked about the top 25 being revealed every week by the AP poll, and you'd get 2, maybe 3 teams. Maybe you'd get 2 teams from ranked 20 to 25 on any given week. Maryland would usually be like 22 or 23. Purdue would be up there. Wisconsin would kind of be up there around 15. That was it for the Big Ten. And you knew that even Maryland and Purdue didn't really have huge, odds of getting to a Final Four, winning the whole thing throughout the regular season anyway, until a few of those Big Ten teams got hot. But like even now, Minnesota's the 25th best team according to Vegas, and they're the 5th Big Ten team on this list. So I think it only took 1 year of a quote-unquote down year from the Big Ten, which still had some rising teams. Minnesota, unfortunately, had an injury at the end of the year, which killed their depth, killed their March Madness run. But Minnesota, Purdue, Wisconsin, Michigan were all really, really strong teams at the end of last year, and you're adding Indiana to that group going into next year. So Michigan State's a title favorite. So the Big Ten basketball is going to be back next year. Nobody should be worried about the slight down spell that was a year ago.
Yeah, and, when you look at it, though, Kevin, the down spell that you and I kept talking about, like, this Big Ten basketball, not very good here, but when you look at the NCAA tournament, they got some teams in, and some of those teams caught fire at the end of the year, and overall, if you didn't watch the whole season, you would have said, well, the Big Ten, how can you say Big Ten basketball was down? But you and I followed it throughout the year. There just wasn't those dominant type teams, and next year they're going to have Michigan State. Well, there's going to be another team in there, Kevin, that is going to put all the pieces together. And is it Minnesota? We don't know. Could be. But there's going to be that team that gets it right. They put all the pieces together, and they're that team that, maybe not a nationally scary team, but is playing well in the Big Ten. Last year, Northwestern was kind of that Cinderella, put the pieces together, and we're going to stay near the top. That was the surprise to maybe many people. There's going to be another team like that this year, Kevin, that we did not expect, that's going to be lingering up around that 3-4 position, that they just got it all together, and they're playing good basketball. Want to move on to a horrific story, like I said. We're not going to sit and we're not going to pry about the story. We're not going to get into all of the details about the story. But to preface what we're going to talk about, there was an incident at Penn State, a fraternity, a death at the fraternity house, at the party. The fraternity brothers did not call paramedics, did not call authorities, let this guy basically lie there, and now they're in court for it, Kevin. Evidence is coming out. If you want to learn more about the incident itself, just Google Penn State hazing. You will find it. And so, Kevin, this is something, I mentioned it earlier in the show, I don't want people to be naive about this. I don't want them to think this is something, oh, my God, it's just, oh, my God, this thing at Penn State, how could they do that? It is not isolated to Penn State. But what happened at Penn State is horrific. My heart, my thoughts go to that prayer, losing their young son. That should not happen. But this is not an isolated case at Penn State. This is something that goes on every campus. It can be as large as Penn State, or it can be, Wisconsin Whitewater, not small, Kevin. We're a medium-sized college, but it goes on every campus. And the thing that we want to talk about is how it relates to athletics. Maybe share some stories, give some thoughts. But I guess the thing about this incident, Kevin, when I heard it on the news this morning, is I think back to when I coached. I think back to when I played. It has gotten out of hand. It has gotten out of hand. You mentioned it earlier. You're not going to stop it. The maturity level of 18, 19, 20, heck, even 22 and 23-year-olds is the problem. And when you get to it, the immature ones seem to take precedent over the mature ones. And the reason I'm going to say that is that when you look at these incidents that you see happen that make the news for hazing, and this Penn State one is extreme. It is an extreme hazing event that occurred. I would say these things happen, Kevin, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've been around it. Mature ones leave the situation. Mature ones leave. Now, is it right? No, maybe they should try to stop it. But you got to remember, you're 18, 19, and the immature ones are probably ruling the roost. The mature ones, maybe they did try to stop it. I wasn't there. I don't know. Thinking back to my situations, yeah, hey, somebody may have said, hey, this is not right. Don't do that. Guess what? You're not going to sway an 18, 19-year-old immature kid that now has a six-pack of beer in him. And so the mature ones that don't want to be around a bad situation, you know what they do, Kevin? They get out of that situation. They walk away. And some people may say, well, that's not mature. You should have stopped it. I will guarantee, Kevin, that 7 out of 10 times, maybe a little less, maybe 6 out of 10, but it could be higher, 8 out of 10 times, mature people are going to try to stop the immature people. The problem is these immature people, they don't get it through their thick skull, especially when you add alcohol to the mix. You're not going to sway that opinion. But I would say that the mature ones, the reason that mature kids aren't involved in these situations, 1, they don't put themselves in that situation, or 2, they walk away. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess, like I mentioned before, there are kids, and I guess I'll get to that point of correlating it over to sports, but if you're 18, 19 years old, this kid was 19, Timothy Piazza was his name, and if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, even if you're a 23-year-old, fifth-year senior, you can be immature. I mean, there are immature 40-year-olds. There are mature 15-year-olds. It just kind of depends on the person, and whether that's childhood life and how they were brought up, or whether they just matured because they didn't have a stable home and they decided, you know what, I have to grow up if I want to survive. It depends on the kid and their upbringing and all that. But so my point is that from person to person, you can get an entirely immature human being, or you can get a completely mature human being. And to go over to sports for a second, someone like Russell Wilson, who turns down millions of dollars to play baseball and has a great upbringing as a child and can go on national radio shows and do 15-minute long interviews with national radio show hosts and completely hold his own at the age of 18. And just, you absolutely know how mature he is to go from NC State and say no to baseball, and that's okay, I'll go to Wisconsin and just dominate there and make this seamless transition. And, Russell Wilson is one of those guys that you just knew had maturity, whether he was 5'11" or whether he was 6'6". That was the difference in him being picked in the third round and being picked top 10 overall. But ultimately, you knew, if you're the Seattle Seahawks, that you were getting a mature kid who could be a franchise quarterback just based on who he was as a person. And you take a guy like Johnny Manziel, and the maturity just wasn't there. And I said on draft night and before that, I wouldn't even draft him because he can't be a franchise quarterback. 0 reason on the field, 100% reason from the neck up, just off the field. just couldn't handle being a franchise quarterback. No matter if he's more talented than Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Michael Vick, doesn't matter, because he just couldn't handle it from a maturity standpoint. I think that's huge when talking about franchise quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers or David Carr or Derek Carr, not David Carr. Just any franchise quarterback who's successful, they're mature, and they can own a locker room, and they understand their surroundings. They just get it. And some people like Johnny Manziel or Ryan Leaf just didn't get it at their age. That's fine. That's just two extreme examples, but that's just what it is. And so at this party, I don't remember the exact number of kids. I think it was 16. Yeah, 16 students at Penn State are facing, potential charges in this hazing death that took place in February this year. So, there has been text release. There's been video released of what went down, and there were texts saying, "Oh my God," between kids at this party, like, okay, well, if the police find out what happened, or if they find video, or if they find pictures, we know we're effed. And those texts have come to light now, and video of beer being thrown at this kid while he's basically just completely incoherent and just can't do anything. He's just not there as a human, because he had, I think it was 9 beers or 9 drinks in an hour. I think there was a Google report from one of the kids' phones there, one of the 16 kids that are potentially being charged, that they made a Google search of what happens to a 200-pound guy if he has 9 drinks in an hour. And so just all of this stuff was known, and this kid was just basically flopping around and just trying to survive. And I saw there was a point in which he was basically praying and just holding his head throughout the night, because he had fallen down like numerous amounts of stairs throughout the night, and kids throwing beers at him, and kids, not letting him move. And it was just horrific, some of the stuff I read about the videos and the text that came out from this. But basically, it just seems like a frat party where there was a lot of drinking. And like Troy said, there's no really stopping this at Penn State, at UW-Whitewater, at no matter what college it is. Kids are going to drink. Some kids are going to drink more than they should at a party. That happens at just about every party on every campus across the country, that kids drink more alcohol than they should. It doesn't have to be extremely dangerous levels. In this case, it was. But, kids drink more than they should at college. That's just part of it. Some kids just decide not to drink whatsoever. Some parties are 100% alcohol-free, and some parties are, you have a drink an hour and you're perfectly fine to have 5 drinks throughout the night, but to have a drink every hour and it passes through your body, you're fine. I'm not saying all parties are similar, but some parties, some kids just drink more than they should. That was the case here. Kids tried to just cover up what they were doing, and the fact of hazing and throwing beers and not letting this kid move, and watching him just fall down flights of stairs, and eventually that's why he died, was because of brain injuries the next day. That was the big thing with this, was that not even were the kids hazing him, but they didn't call 911. They kind of wanted to make up a story and hide alcohol and cover up the fact that they knew anything was wrong with this guy. For I think it was 12 or 13 hours before they finally called the police the next morning, and then he died that day after the party. But so it just a bunch of immature kids who tried to cover things up. And like Troy said, this happens at whatever college you attended or are attending or are going to attend. It's just the fact of 18, 19-year-old kids. There are going to be immature ones. There are going to be parties that get out of hand. Troy, I know you said at your time in college that there was really no hazing, at least to your experience, and at least from my experience and partying and whatnot. I never saw hazing either, but I know that it happens, at least in today's day and age. I don't know where that kind of changed in colleges. If you never really heard of hazing, I definitely did. I just never witnessed it. I went to plenty of parties, not that I was this huge partier, but there was never extreme levels of dangerousness. And if there were, I mean, I was partying with my friends, and it would be a house party with say 20 to 30 people, and we were mature enough and friendly enough to not let, people get hazed. I mean, that's just comes down to a maturity thing. That's my overall take on it, but I'll send it back over to you, Troy.
Well, the big thing here, Kevin, is don't let it happen. And like you, I partaked in my share of adult beverages when I went to college. That's part of college life. People will make choices, and the thing is, Kevin, you brought it up. I hung around with people that would go to house parties and not even drink. They just went because they wanted to be social. I went to house parties where I had friends that were oblivious drunks, and I was embarrassed to be around them. So I've seen it all. I've seen both sides of it. I've even went to parties, and I went to parties before, like during the season. I would not partake in alcoholic beverages due to what I was doing, right? I would have an occasional beer during the season, but I wouldn't party hard. And so I would be one of those guys that would go there just to hang out, just to say, hey, what's going on? That's part of college life. But you have to have a group that is aware of the surroundings. And I'll be honest, Kevin, I hope these guys, I hope the book gets thrown at them. They deserve to be in jail for what they did. There's teasing and a certain amount, but when you get to a certain level, you have to know in your mind something's wrong. It's not fun anymore. Like picking on somebody. Okay, I know people say, well, that's a form of hazing and it's bullying. Okay. I understand that, but that's about as much hazing, Kevin, that I ever went through when I was a freshman. Like back in my day, and I joke about being the old man. I mean, at 46 years old, I am old, but not that old. And so you think back, I was at Whitewater from the years 1988 to 1992, Kevin. And not that long ago, 25 years ago, hazing wasn't a thing. Now, did the seniors pick on the freshmen? Yeah. Like, we had to do laundry for the upperclassmen. Like, that's our initiation. It wasn't going to a house party and get bombed and getting made a fool of. Did they pick on us? Did they call us, like, different type names while we were in? Yeah, because we were freshmen. That was part of it. I know the times have changed, and so people will say, well, now that's bullying. Okay, maybe you could win me over in that, but I lived through it, Kevin, and it was a rite of passage. But it was never anything that was going to harm us, and even emotionally. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, I know there's that limit. When you talk about bullying and emotional distress, it wasn't that. It was fun and games, and it never got out of hand. It's like, okay, do my laundry. And if you don't do laundry, we're going to kick balls at you at practice. I mean, that happened. Okay, so you didn't do the laundry. Guess what? Stand over there, and 5 of us are going to kick balls at you. Probably not the smartest thing to do, right? But, if Coach saw it, he probably would have been mad because there could have been injury. But we're kids. We're 18, 19 years old. Those things go on, and I'm not condoning it, and I'm not saying that it should happen. But I lived through it, so I can't deny the fact that I lived through it as a freshman. Then, as a senior, as the captain, I had my freshman that did my laundry, Kevin. That was part of it. It was that little ritual that happened. Now, I'll flip over to when I coached. I didn't want to know, and so I said I turned a blind eye, and I always said that you know what's going on in your program, right? I knew that there was some of these things going on, but it was never involving alcohol, at least to my knowledge. Now, again, I'm not a naive coach, Kevin, right? I know that they probably went to parties. My players drank. I am not stupid. But if I would have ever found out that there was some kind of hazing going on or a rite of passage that include underage drinking, I would have put my foot down. As a coach, though, Kevin, I did acknowledge hazing. I did acknowledge bullying. And I had a team meeting without the freshmen. And I told my upperclassmen, look, you need to be responsible. You need to understand what the perception is outside of this locker room. And so when you are doing things as a team, you need to be responsible. You need to understand that perception is reality. So if you're caught doing something or you're seen doing something, that is a reflection on the team, and that's what people are going to think we're doing. So be smart about it. I think I had mentioned to you on another show. I got called to a house party at 2:30 in the morning, Kevin. So, again, I know it went on. I wanted my kids to be responsible off the field. And that, to be honest, I don't know what more I could have done as a coach. Because if I put my foot down, no hazing, it's still going to happen, Kevin. I can't be naive to that fact as a coach, that players and students are going to get together and do these things. Unfortunately, that's the way the world is. What I did is I wanted to be proactive and tell these kids to be responsible when doing things outside of the locker room. I never witnessed any hazing in my locker room from seniors to freshmen. Because, again, it's one of those things where coach is not going to be happy if he finds out we're doing some of these things. So I don't know what went on as far as hazing went. I will tell you this. I never had anybody come to me and say that they were being bullied, that they felt uncomfortable, because after I talked to the upperclassmen, I brought the incoming freshmen in, and I talked to them about the culture of the team and things that could go on in college, and that if they felt uncomfortable at any time, that my door was open. I never in my years of coaching, Kevin, had a player come to me and say they were uncomfortable in a situation or were asked to do something that they did not feel that they should do. And I'm not saying that everybody would, because there's peer pressure there, but I thought that that was all I could do as a coach to try and at least let my kids know, look, we understand what's going on here. We're not going to tolerate it to a certain extent, but be responsible. That's what I did. You know, I guess, Kevin, as an outsider listening into that as a coach, what more do you think coaches can do in athletics for college when it comes to hazing? I'm not sure what else you can do as a coach. I've been there. I thought I did what I could do. Maybe I could have done more. But, again, I never had an incident, you know, like the one at Penn State that went to that level. Nor did I have anybody come to me saying that they felt uncomfortable in a situation. I'm not going to sit down and ask the questions, and maybe I should. We talked about Rick Pitino, but there's a difference between brothels and college hazing. There really is, because that deals with recruiting. These were my kids off the field. I coached in a small college, Kevin. I would have known if there's something going on that shouldn't have went on with one of my players in a hazing incident. So I want to get your quick thoughts.
I thought what you brought up, well, you brought a lot up, but one of the things you brought up was great, was that you were a player and you had to do seniors' laundry. And when you were a senior, you had freshmen do your laundry. And things would happen like, okay, a freshman doesn't do laundry, and you get balls kicked at you at, before practice or some random, open field events or whatever. And so that's just, that's what happens. And not to say that happens at every team, every sport, every college, but take any football team or any team that has more than, 4 or 5 people on it, which is basically any D1, D2, D3 organized sport, and you're going to have, I guess, quote unquote, picking on and PC terms of today, bullying, but it's just, maybe we're different and we're not PC enough to say, like, okay, that it's not bullying, it's not crossing a line to say, you're freshmen, you do the laundry of the seniors, do that, and we're cool because you're freshmen. That's just what it is. It's not bullying. It's not crossing a line. Ultimately, I don't think you have to be
it's like I said, Kevin, not to interrupt, but it's like I said, it's a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage. And when you're done and you get to move on and you're a senior, you can do the same thing.
Right.
And I'm going to go off here and let you get back to your thought because I'm going to go back to this. I don't know where the disconnect happened. Like I told you, I did laundry. I made a freshman do my laundry. Somewhere along the lines of society, Kevin, things like that, the line was broken. And something happened where all of a sudden hazing went to a bullying stature. It went to a physical nature. It went to an alcoholic nature. I don't know how that happened. I just don't know. And again, is it just the way society is? But when I was in even high school and college playing athletics, when I was a freshman, if you want to call it hazing, fine. I got hazed. I got bullied, whatever. I'm not emotionally scarred from it. I don't have any bruises. I don't have anything that caused any harm to me. It was fun. It was playful. And so we did the same thing. We didn't change the rules. We kept the same rules 4 years that we did it in the past. Somewhere along the line, Kevin, it changed. And that's what I'm going to leave you at. You great thought. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I think I wanted to just add, it's just a rite of passage.
Yeah, and I guess that word is probably a good one to use, is playful. It's playful. It's not bullying. There's a line to be drawn, and like you said, it obviously has been drawn and broken and crossed over and whatever you want to say about it. But to me, it doesn't take maturity to know when the line has been drawn, and maybe I'm incorrect on that. Maybe these kids just didn't know, but to have someone just obviously a belligerent drunk and just can't walk on their own and they're holding their head because they've fallen downstairs, and to, keep them from moving and to throw beers at them. And it's just, that to me, that's when obviously people had to have been around that just knew that lines were drawn, and lines were crossed and they didn't do anything about it. And
yes, Kevin, how many times in college, and I'll tell you, I've been there, how many times in college have you had to be with a buddy that was just so drunk, puking his brains out, you had to hold his head up so he didn't hit it on the toilet, and you basically protected your buddy. I've been there. I did it a million times, and I'll tell you what, if somebody threw beer at him, I'd be pissed off. I'd be like, get the hell away from him, man. You can't even talk.
Right.
So you're absolutely right, Kevin. It gets me a little worked up. That's why I said these kids, the book needs to be thrown at them, because what happened there is just ignorant. Because I've been there actually after college too. When I was in the real world, I had buddies at bars that got drunk, and I had to protect them. Not necessarily protect them, but make sure they got home okay, and make sure that nothing happened to them. Where's humanity, Kevin, in this? That's what I'm thinking about. And then for those, to be honest, if they have on video those that threw beer at this kid or did anything when he was incoherent, they should be thrown in jail too, because that's stupid. What are you doing? What fun do you get out of that? Come on now. So, Kevin, I'll ask you the question. How many buddies have you had to, I'll air quote, protect because they were so drunk?
Yeah, multiple. I mean, I'm not going to put a number on it. It's not like it's, in the hundreds or dozens. But, yeah, I mean, my close friend group that we would go to house parties with or host house parties and then go downtown for the night, there was at least one who got obviously too drunk basically every single weekend. And that's, it's immature. It was what it was, and our friend group knew it, and it's just like, okay, this kid's just going to drink too much. And obviously if outsiders are coming in and throwing stuff at him and, really just crossing that line and bullying the kid and pushing him around after he can't move, I mean, obviously we would step in. We're his friends. And I guess that's the one thing to me about this is if you're going to be a freshman in college or you're kind of, I guess, a quote-unquote loner and you go to a party and you don't have a friend group with you or just someone else with you, I would say leave that party. I wouldn't go to a party alone. Not to say you can't go to parties to meet people, but I just wouldn't go into a crazy environment without someone, because you just should have someone with you that cares about you and is a human, like you said, Troy. Just if you've got a close friend and he obviously gets drunk because that's just what he does every weekend, and you know it going in and you know it's going to be annoying, but you're his friend, you're going to make sure he gets home safe. You're going to make sure he doesn't, choke on his own vomit and die. I mean, that's just being a human. That's just being
Kevin,
there for
and I
your
would
friend.
imagine, too, you had this, again, I look at our two different generations. Now, right there, parallel, same stuff. Doesn't matter if I'm 46 and you're 26, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing. We did the same thing, and I guarantee the same response came out on the weekend from you and your friends. It's your turn to take care of so-and-so. I did it last weekend. It's your turn. And you roll your eyes like, oh, my God, why is it my turn? I guarantee, Kevin, that came out in your group of friends, that exact phrase.
Yep, absolutely 100% correct. I mean, that's just it. That's what happens. And it's okay. It's, you take care of your friend once every month, and that's what it is. It's not fun, but it's just, that's what you do if you're going out with a group of people and one or two of them.
But we wanted our friends to wake up the next day, Kevin.
Yeah.
We didn't want any harm to them.
Right.
And again, that's where I get worked up about this, is where was somebody to step in and say, what you're doing is wrong? The little I read, get off his legs. What are you doing sitting on a kid?
Yeah.
And better yet, the kid falls down. Go see if he's okay. Don't just laugh at him. I mean, come on now. So, Kevin, I think we could go on and on for hours upon hours about our disgust with what happened. And so you were bringing up a good point about putting yourself in situations where things like this don't happen. And I agree with you 100%. I can't remember ever going to a house party alone, Kevin. I just can't. It was always with a group of friends. And again, I want people listening in, whether you agree with what Kevin and I are saying or disagree, the point here is what happened at Penn State is an extreme. But the things that happened at Penn State happen every weekend, Kevin, on a college campus. And those of you that are attending college that may listen to this show, it's okay to stand up for someone, even if you don't know them, because you know the difference between right and wrong. And there is a difference when alcohol is involved, Kevin, and I think it's even more important for people to understand that, because decision-making when alcohol is involved is impaired, and something that seems funny, would you do that same thing if you were sober? My answer is probably not. I've done probably many things with a few beers in me that I would never have done while I was sober. And it goes back, and I'm not perfect, and I'm saying that because I don't want people to think I am perfect. But I know, and I'm going to go here and say it, it's a podcast, I know for hell, Kevin, I never threw beer at somebody that couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And that, it pisses me off. It really does. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about in this incident, it just can't continue. But you're not going to stop it. The only way that you can get a control over it is to have people step up and do things about it. Kevin, I thought you brought up a great point. Go with a group. Go with a group of people. Don't go alone. And if you're going with a group of people that are not going to protect you, find a different group of people. I mean, it's that simple. If you go to a party, and I'll share this, Kevin. I mean, and you might laugh, and because you might have done it too. I mean, I look back to some of the pranks we pulled. Again, they're not pranks that are going to cause harm. We put guys' hands in a warm bucket of water so he peed himself. You did that, and it happens. It works. We markered up people on the head. You put a big L on their forehead. You know, well, he's going to wake up and see it. Yeah, he's mad and want to beat the crap out of us, but, hey, you passed out. But we checked your vitals, and we made sure that you were laying in a position where when you were done puking, you weren't going to puke and any harm be done. Your head was off the bed. You're going to puke on the floor. So, you know, some of these things, Kevin, comes down to humanity. And what do you do to help your friends? So I wanted to throw that in there. You've got some good thoughts. What else you want to throw in? We could probably literally, I know this isn't even a sports topic, but you and I could probably sit here and talk about 2-3 more hours about this.
Oh, easily. I mean, just numerous things come to my mind as you're talking, and it's like, well, that topic's going to be, you know, another 20 minutes. This topic's going to be another 20 minutes. I just, like you said, it comes down to humanity, and, you know, at least from my experience, that one person, you know, our friend group when I was going to college who would drink too much every weekend, and we'd have to take care of him and whatever. You know, there were a couple incidents where it's like, okay, is he like actually okay, or is he like just passed out drunk and he's going to wake up the next morning and going to have a terrible hangover? There were a couple moments where it's like, okay, is he actually okay? And so we would check on him. Like, hey, let's make sure he's still breathing, because he's been obviously drinking too much. And it's the end of the night.
Did you stay up during the night, Kevin, and go in and check on this kid, or you continued drinking and you still went in and checked on him like every hour or every 2 hours?
Exactly. I mean, you obviously check in and make sure the person, I don't care if he's my friend or not, if there was someone who, you know, didn't look like they were going to breathe, then yes, I'm going to check on them. I mean, that's
so what the hell happened to humanity, Kevin? Again, the gap difference between you and me is 20-some years. But we did the same thing. We checked on people. We had house parties at our house. We had people that would pass out in our house. And these are people I didn't know from Adam that we checked on every hour to make sure they were breathing. So I'm going to say it one more time. Every single one of those, and I'm not going to say the bad word, they need to be in jail now for not doing that, for being irresponsible.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand about this story, I guess, is it's one thing if you've got 16 idiots sitting on a kid who can't move and is praying to live and is holding his head throughout the night because he's got injuries to his head because of what took place at this party. It's one thing to have 16 idiots there to just laugh it off and nag it on and be complete idiots, but to not have one person at this party, not one of the 16, could at least say, like, hey, let's make sure this guy's alive. I don't understand that part of it. That's what I don't understand is if you're going to go to a party like this and you notice this and you notice someone and you think like, hey, let's just make sure this guy lying on this bed or lying on the ground or lying on the couch, let's just make sure they're breathing. You know, you don't have to know the person. You don't have to be their friend. You don't have to go to the party with them. Just make sure they're breathing. Make sure they're alive. I mean, that's just being a human. So that's the one thing I really don't understand about this story.
College drinking 101, Kevin, every freshman learns it. When somebody passes out, make sure they're not laying on their back.
Yeah.
And so you check when somebody passes out, make sure that they're not laying on their back. And we all know why. They could vomit while they're passed out, and, you know, the vomit would then suffocate them. You learn that. You learn that if you go to college, that if you're with somebody that passes out, make sure that they don't pass out on their back. It's not like a class, but it's just common sense. There's no common sense in the world right now, Kevin. And I don't understand it. Now, again, I understand this is an extreme situation. There are so many situations that we don't hear about that this is going on, so this is minuscule, but it happened. And one time is too many for the idiotic perspective that happened on this thing. Where is the human race right there? Like you said, Kevin, not one person wanted to step up and take care of this kid. That disgusts me.
Yeah, that's the real, I mean, obviously someone dying, this story is a tragedy, but it's just not one of the 16, and I think there were more than 16, but just these 16 kids going to court for this trial. Not one person at this party wanted to make sure this kid was alive. I mean, if you're going to a party and you notice someone's just completely passed out drunk and they don't look like they're breathing, like numerous friends of mine just didn't look like they were breathing, and obviously and they were, but you checked on them. And I guess that's the point I was making, was just be a human and make sure someone's not dead at the party you're going to or are at or whatever. That's just being a human. That's the one thing, again, I just didn't understand about this case. It just shocks me to hear something like that. It would be one thing if part of the story was there were 3 kids who tried to, save their friend and, made sure he was okay, but they got locked up in the basement by these other 16 kids. And so they literally just, took all his friends away from him and just kept picking on him until the kid literally died. That'd be terrible. But there's not even like a notice of that in any of the stories I've read about this, is that it's not like anyone even tried to help the kid from any account that I'm reading. That's the part that I just 100% don't understand and can't imagine going to a party or hosting a party or being at a party where no one cares, not even just like to make fun of someone and have that playful banter of being friends, or 2 friend groups go to a big party and quote unquote get into it, but not really. A couple guys are picking on, a couple guys from the other group, and, there's yelling, and a couple people just storm off because they're drunk or whatever, and you take your friends away from that party, whatever. That's fine. But just to
or fights. I mean, fist fights happen too, Kevin, at these parties. I mean, I've been around. I've had to pull people away from fighting situations.
Yeah.
Again, these things happen. It's college life, and I'm not condoning it. Everybody has a choice, but it's not going away, folks. I look at it. I did it. I knew it happened as a coach. I wanted my players to be responsible. And, Kevin, I think that's the bottom line. I think that's what you're saying. Where's the responsibility? Who's going to take action and be responsible? I mean, that's the bottom line. You know it's going to happen. Do it responsibly. And because you're going to have kids. And, this kid is, from what I read, a great kid. My friend Kevin was a great kid too, but did 12 beers in him, and he pissed in our underwear drawer every time he got drunk. I had to throw that out there. I mean, that's not cool. But you know what? That's what happens. Some of these kids are great kids, but you get alcohol in them, they can't handle it. They need friends around them to make sure they don't pee in somebody's underwear drawer. They don't run off in the field naked. They don't do stupid things. And then on the flip side of that, you got to have friends to protect them. That's why I said protect. So when somebody else is doing something stupid, get them off their back. So, again, Kevin, we could go on and on. What else you got?
Yeah. I know we're over an hour already, and we were talking before the show, let's keep this, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. Obviously, this one also goes over an hour. And like you said, Troy, we could go for a couple more hours at least. But I guess from a coaching perspective, to tie this back into sports, and like you said, is there more you could have done as a coach? I think there's absolutely, of course, there is more you could have done. But the way you seem to have handled it, it was kind of perfect. It's like, hey, my door's open. Talk to your upperclassmen. Say, I know partying is going to go on. I know drinking is going to go on. I know you're going to make them do your laundry as freshmen, or whatever the case is at your school, your sport that happens on your team. But it's, there is a line that any human, I think anyway, just knows when it's drawn. And to do someone's laundry, or to put their hand in water to make them pee, or to mark an L on someone's forehead, it's just playful crap that kids do. It just is what it is. That's one thing. But to, kind of, I guess, help someone die in this case, basically, to make them struggle, that's crossing a line. That doesn't that's not maturity, immaturity. That's just being a human being. So that's what's crazy to me about this. I think the way you handled it as a coach, I'm kind of going all over the place here, but the way you handled it as a coach, I thought was perfect. It's my door's open. I know crap's going to happen. Just be responsible. You can be immature. That's perfectly fine. I know that crap's going to happen, but just be responsible. Make sure no one dies. Obviously, if a kid came to you and said, yes, I feel uncomfortable with what's, been taking place, what seniors are doing to me, what the whole team's doing to me, obviously you can have a talk and kick kids off the team, whatever the case is, but that never happened to you. And I don't think it happens to most teams, most coaches. I don't think there are a lot of players out there that feel seriously endangered by what's going on. Maybe you're the outsider on your team. That's one thing. Maybe you have practical jokes between your friends and you get L's marked on your forehead and, whatever the case may be. But there's a line to be drawn. That line was obviously crossed over here. And it's just a tragic story because it's crazy to me how no one was a human being in this case to make sure that a kid was okay, and that all these kids just were worried about the cops figuring it out and waited 12, 13 hours after the fact, after that party, to actually call 911, to hide the alcohol, to hide as much evidence as they could, to make sure their story was straight. It's just crazy to hear that many kids like this not act like a human being, not be responsible. So I thought what you did as a coach, how you worded it, is perfect. You can't do much more than saying your door's open. Crap's going to happen. Come to me if you feel uncomfortable, and I'll deal with it. But
and Kevin, the thing is, knowing that I said that, even then, like I told you, kids are not going to feel comfortable. So you try to keep a thumb on it. You really do. But at the other side of it, if you have team rules, no alcohol, no drinking, no underage drinking, blah, blah, you have all these rules. But if I'm sitting here and I look back on my coaching career, Kevin, and say my team never did anything because I set down rules, I'd be naive. I would be a naive coach. You hope, and really it is, you hope. And you hope that your team, that you've coached them and you've shown them how to be good people. Because if they're good people off the field, crap like this doesn't happen. Because your players are going to step up. And that's what I always preached. I swear by this line. You talk to any of my players, Kevin, you talk to any of them that were on my team, they will quote you that phrase, perception is reality. Because what you do off the field is how they perceive you and my team. And I called it my team. It was my team. That's how they perceive my team. So don't do anything stupid. And believe me, and I'm not going to get into it now, but that incident when I got called to that party, can you imagine how happy I was? Can you imagine how happy I was to have to deal with that perception?
Yeah.
And believe me, it was addressed. And we had practice nice and early the next morning. And it was addressed about the perception. It wasn't about what they did, Kevin. I wasn't upset about I shouldn't say I wasn't upset about what they did, because there's a rule, no drinking. I had to deal with the suspensions and whatnot after the fact. Part of me and half of me was worried about what the community now perceives of my team.
Right.
That was a big part of it. So, and anybody that plays for me know that that's a big thing about perception. Knowing that my team is held in the highest standard off the field. And as a coach, I think that's all you can do. But again, at the end of the day, the hazing, the drinking, the college life, it's going to happen. We're not going to stop it. We just hope that we've done enough to make these kids responsible. So with that said, youngster, I think we have said a lot today. This could actually go down as one of our longest shows. And we wanted to keep it as one of our shortest.
Yep. Classic go big or go home, I guess, going over an hour easily, and us anticipating and trying to keep it under an hour, but we just go back and forth, whether it's sports, whether it's a bigger thing beyond sports like this. This is obviously a tragic story, and it was terrible, and we voiced our opinions on it and our experiences, and it was a very interesting show just to be a part of, not to listen as an outsider, but just to be a part of, to hear your stories and to regale mine, and just it's just interesting to see what it was like 22, 23 years ago. I graduated in 2013 from Whitewater. I think it was 21 years after you did, Troy. And, you know, still a ton of the same exact type of stories. We were humans. We were responsible humans. Maybe we were immature at times while being drunk. But, I mean, you're a responsible human being at the end of the day who cares about someone else's life and making sure that someone's alive. And I guess that's crazy, insane story here that was terrible and tragic. But be a responsible human being, and if you're going to a party as a college kid and you've got someone, a buddy, or, you know, 10 buddies who are with you, and just, you know, be in a group, don't wander off by yourself. Don't, you know, just be a responsible human being. That's all you can do. There's going to be immature stuff that happens at parties, but for everything to go the wrong way like it did here, like Troy said a few times, it's an extreme case. If you're a parent listening to this show, don't think that your kid's out there, you know, doing this and being a part of these type of parties where no one cares about another human being. But this stuff happens at college.
Kevin, I have to add this. You have wonderfully wrapped the show up with your points. Awesome. But I want to add this: if you're a parent listening in, don't be naive and think they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Especially if they're away at college, because they're doing it. Now they might not be doing it to an extreme. But they're out there. They're probably attending parties. Whether or not they're drinking, I don't know. But don't be a naive parent. Don't think that your kid is not going to these type of events.
Yeah. And just at the end of the day, it's being a responsible human being. And whether you're a coach or a parent or that actual kid in college, just, you know, the most you can do is be open to other people and your kids or your players or your friends, and know that, you know, you have each other's backs and you raise them the way you want to be raised as your kid if you're a parent, or if you're a coach, and say, hey, I'm always here for you if you feel uncomfortable, or, you know, call me at any time. It's just very simple, basic, common sense stuff of being a human, and none of that was taken in this case, which is why it's, you know, become such a national story. And all the details are coming out, and all of them are just horrific, and it's crazy to think that stuff happens like this. But this partying, this immaturity, it happens at every level, every team, every college out there. It happens. There's no stopping it. But as long as you are raising and are teaching your kids and players to be responsible human beings that care about other people, that's really all you can do. That's all I have on it.
You wrapped it up magnificently, Kevin. Eloquently, magnificent, great wrap-up. With that said, for the youngster, I am Old Man Troy. Find us on Twitter, @KidCunny, @TroyRobert967. Join us next week, another episode of Go Big or Go Home. Have a great day, everyone.